May 2007. A family vacation in Portugal turns into one of the most haunting mysteries in modern history. A 3-year-old girl vanishes from her bed in the middle of the night, and nearly 2 decades later, the world is still asking the same terrifying question: what really happened to Madeleine McCann? Madeleine McCann is a 3-year-old girl. She has blue eyes, blonde hair, and a small distinctive mark in her right eye, a coloboma that her parents always said made her uniquely, unmistakably her. And on the night of the 3rd of May, in Praia da Luz, on the Algarve coast, she vanishes without a single confirmed witness to what actually happened. No body. No confirmed suspect ever brought to trial. No conviction. No definitive answer. 19 years later, a brand new Channel 5 drama is promising to change all of that. Written by Philip Ralph and directed with what the production team describes as an almost obsessive commitment to the official record, under suspicion Kate McCann centers on 2 specific days, the 2 days of formal police interrogation that turned this case from a missing child investigation into something far darker, far more complicated, and far more contested. And according to The Telegraph, this drama contains 8 brand new insights into the Madeleine McCann case. 8 revelations that, according to their coverage, will fundamentally reshape how the public understands what happened. Tonight, True Crime Narrator is going to walk you through every single one of those 8 insights. But we are not going to stop there. Because the official record, the court testimony, the forensic reports, the police admissions that are sitting in the public domain tells a story that is considerably more layered than any single drama, any single newspaper article, and any single narrative has yet been willing to fully confront. So if you think you already know this case, stay with us. Because what we are about to document may genuinely change the way you see it. And before we go any further, if you are new to True Crime Narrator, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. This channel is built on one principle: documented facts, verified records, and no shortcuts. If that is the kind of true crime content you have been looking for, you are in exactly the right place. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story told properly, and let's get into it. 19 years. That is how long this case has been open. 19 years since a family checked into a holiday resort in southern Portugal for what was supposed to be a relaxing break. 19 years since Kate and Jerry McCann sat at a restaurant table within sight of their holiday apartment, checking on their children at intervals throughout the evening, and came back to find that their eldest daughter was no longer in her bed. 19 years since the word Madeleine first appeared on the front page of every major newspaper in Britain and then rippled outward across the world. And in all of that time, across all of those years of investigations and counter-investigations, court cases, and books and documentaries and television dramas, the central question has never been definitively answered. What happened to Madeleine McCann? To understand where we are today, we need to go back to where it all began. And not where the revisionist accounts want to begin, with the moment Kate McCann sat across a table from Portuguese detectives in September of 2007. We need to go back further. We need to go back to the beginning of the chaos. Because as we are about to document, the chaos did not begin when the McCanns became suspects. The chaos began almost from the very first day. On the 3rd of May 2007, at approximately 10 o'clock in the evening, Kate McCann returns to the apartment and discovers Madeleine is missing. The alarm is raised. The resort is searched. Portuguese police are called. And from that moment, one of the most scrutinized, most documented, and most disputed missing child investigations in modern history begins to unfold. And here is revelation number 1. The first of the 8 insights that The Telegraph and the new Channel 5 drama are putting in front of the public, and it is this: 4 months after Madeleine McCann disappeared, the investigation into her disappearance was in total chaos. Now the drama and its surrounding coverage frame this chaos as a consequence of a specific event. They point to September of 2007. They point to the moment the McCanns were formally made arguidos, which is the Portuguese legal term for persons under formal suspicion. They suggest that the investigation descended into disorder at precisely the moment the authorities turned their focus onto Madeleine's parents. But the documented record forces us to challenge that framing. Not because it is entirely wrong, but because it is dangerously incomplete. Let us talk about what was actually happening in the weeks before September. Let us talk about what was happening in June and July of 2007, because the picture that emerges from the court testimony, from the police records, and from the contemporaneous reporting is not a picture of a competent, coherent investigation that was derailed by the decision to focus on the McCanns. It is a picture of an investigation that was already struggling, that was already caught between competing theories, unreliable leads, and a fundamental uncertainty at its very core. 6 weeks after Madeleine disappears, a South African man named Danny Krugel arrives in Portugal. Krugel is not a police officer. He is not a forensic scientist. He is a tracker, hired privately, who claims to possess a device of his own invention, a device he calls the Matter Orientation System, that is capable of locating a human being using only a sample of their DNA. He is given hair taken from Madeleine McCann's hairbrush. He calibrates his device. And then he announces his conclusion: Madeleine McCann is still within a 1-kilometer radius of the Ocean Club Hotel. Now, let us pause here for a moment. Let us think about what this means in practical terms. It is the middle of June. It is the height of the Portuguese summer. Praia da Luz is a busy tourist resort packed with holidaymakers from across Europe. And into the middle of this, you have an extraordinary scene: a private investigator with an unverified device, surrounded by camera crews, narrows the search for a missing child to within 1 kilometer of her last known location. The Portuguese police do not dismiss this information. They act on it. And they act on it in a way that has consequences that ripple through the entire investigation. Krugel identifies an area where he believes Madeleine may have been buried. Portuguese police cordon off sections of the beach. In June. In summer. In a working tourist resort. Holidaymakers are asked to leave the water. Families are moved off their towels. What is supposed to be a quiet investigation suddenly becomes a public spectacle, complete with police tape, news cameras, and the extraordinary sight of a beach being treated as a potential burial site. Now here is what the court testimony later reveals. Here is what was said under oath by witnesses and investigators in the legal proceedings that followed. This moment, Krugel's arrival, his findings, the cordoning of the beach, the chaos that followed, was a turning point. Not September. Not the formal declaration of suspicion against the McCanns. This was the moment that trust began to crack. This was the moment that relationships between the Portuguese investigators, the British authorities, the McCann family, and the Portuguese public began to shift. And Krugel does something else before he leaves. He tells the Portuguese authorities that they should bring in cadaver dogs. Dogs trained specifically to detect the scent of human remains. Dogs that are used when investigators believe they are no longer looking for a living person, but for a body. Think about what that suggestion means. Think about the implications of that recommendation landing in the middle of an investigation that is publicly framed as a missing persons case. Think about what it does to the psychology of everyone involved: the investigators, the family, the public. When the man brought in to find a living child recommends bringing in dogs that are only deployed when the living part of the search is believed to be over. After his visit, everything is thrown into disarray. For the first time, according to their own testimony and subsequent court proceedings, the Portuguese detectives begin to communicate a change in their thinking about what might have happened to Madeleine McCann. And then Jerry McCann flies to the United States. He travels to America for meetings related to the public campaign to find Madeleine. And while he is on the other side of the world, something extraordinary happens. Something that will become one of the most disputed episodes in this entire 19-year saga. According to Portuguese police testimony given in court and reported on by the very same outlets now championing the new drama as a corrective to the record, Kate McCann has a dream. She dreams that Madeleine is buried somewhere near Black Rocks on a hillside. The police testimony says that Kate disclosed this dream in a tearful telephone conversation. The police later said that this was another turning point. Another moment that redirected their thinking. Kate McCann has denied this dream ever occurred. So here we have it. In late July of 2007, you have a disputed dream cited in open court by Portuguese detectives as a pivotal moment in their investigation. You have a South African tracker whose unverified device sent officers cordoning off a public beach in the middle of tourist season. You have a family split across 2 continents. You have an investigation that does not know whether it is looking for a living child or a dead one. You have cadavered dogs en route from Britain. And you have a set of leads, sightings, witnesses, composite sketches that are going nowhere. And the Telegraph, and the drama, would have you believe the chaos began in September. Now let us move to revelation number 2. And this one is documented. This one is not disputed. This one is, in fact, an admission made by the authorities themselves. The Portuguese police botched the early stages of this investigation. The Polícia Judiciária, the Portuguese Criminal Investigation Division, have formally acknowledged that their failure to properly secure the scene in the hours immediately following Madeleine's disappearance meant that vital forensic evidence may have been permanently compromised. Irretrievably lost. Gone. Think about what that means in a case built almost entirely on forensic analysis. Think about what it means that the scene, the apartment, the immediate surroundings, the physical environment that should have been locked down within minutes of the alarm being raised, was not properly secured. And it does not stop there. Neither the border police nor the marine police were given descriptions of Madeleine McCann for many hours after Kate and Jerry raised the alarm. Many hours. In a case where every minute matters. In a case where a missing child, if she was being transported, could have been across a border or on a boat in the time it took for the official description to go out. The McCann family moved faster than the police. They had photographs of Madeleine distributed before the official apparatus had even been fully activated. And those photographs, important to note, were not photographs from the holiday itself. They were photographs taken approximately a year earlier, when Madeleine's hair was shorter and darker. But they were distributed immediately, and they were distributed widely. Witness Jane Tanner, one of the group of friends dining with the McCanns on the night Madeleine disappeared, came forward with a description of a man she said she had seen carrying a child away from the direction of the apartment. That description moved through the investigation faster than the official police response did. And that description, Jane Tanner's sighting of what would come to be known as Tanner Man, would shape and in some ways distort the trajectory of the investigation for years. These are not accusations. These are recorded facts. These are institutional failures that the institution itself has acknowledged. And they matter. They matter because every subsequent decision made in this investigation was made on a forensic foundation that had already been compromised before the serious investigative work had even begun. Now we come to revelation number 3. And this is where the timeline starts to feel almost incomprehensible, even 19 years later. On the 11th of August 2007, 10 weeks after Madeleine McCann disappeared, Portuguese detectives made a public statement. They announced to the world that Madeleine McCann might be dead. They stated, openly and publicly, that they were no longer certain they were conducting a missing persons investigation. They suggested that resources would need to be reconsidered in light of this possibility. The 11th of August. 10 weeks in. The cadaver dogs have not yet completed their work. The forensic analysis has not yet been fully processed. And the lead investigating authority publicly declares that the child they are looking for may no longer be alive. Now think about the effect of that declaration. Think about what it does to anyone who might have information about a living Madeleine McCann. Think about what it does to any search operation. Think about what it does to the family. Think about what it communicates to the public about where the investigation is actually heading. And then think about this: it was after this declaration, after the formal public acknowledgement that Madeleine might be dead, that the cadaver dogs were deployed into the apartment, into the vehicles, and across the locations associated with the McCann family. The dogs were brought in to find what the declaration had already suggested might be there. So the sequence is this: public declaration of possible death, followed by deployment of forensic tools designed to find evidence of death. And what those tools found, or appeared to find, becomes revelation number 5. But first, we have to deal with revelation number 4. Because revelation number 4 is arguably the most consequential single fact in this entire case. The moment the McCanns became the focus of the investigation, the active search for Madeleine McCann stopped. Not slowed down. Not was partially redirected. Stopped. The operational search for a living child, the missing persons investigation, was suspended. Resources, personnel, investigative energy, and institutional focus all shifted away from finding Madeleine and toward building a case against her parents. The theory that Portuguese detectives were now operating under was this: Madeleine McCann had died accidentally inside the holiday apartment. Her parents, or one of them, had concealed her body. The cover-up had been executed, and the public campaign to find a living Madeleine was a fiction designed to obscure the truth. That is the theory. That is what the investigation pivoted to. And whether you believe that theory is correct or catastrophically wrong, the documented consequence of it is clear. From the point that theory took hold, no one in the official investigation was actively looking for a living Madeleine McCann. If she was alive somewhere, the apparatus that should have been searching for her had already concluded she was not. And if you are still watching at this point, drop a comment right now with the words "I am still here." Let us see who is truly following this story. Because what is coming in the second half of this narration is where the documented record gets even more complicated, even more contested, and even more important to understand accurately. Let us talk about the forensic evidence. Because this is where the official record, the legal record, and the media record diverge most dramatically. And it is where precision matters most. Revelation number 5, the cadaver dogs alerted to a hire car rented by the McCanns 25 days after Madeleine disappeared. And biological material was found in that vehicle. This is not in dispute. The alert happened. The material was found. What is in dispute, what has been at the center of the legal and forensic argument ever since, is what that material was and what it proved. The samples were sent to the Forensic Science Service Laboratory in Birmingham, England. The scientists there conducted their analysis. And their conclusion was this: the DNA results were inconclusive. The sample could not be definitively matched to Madeleine McCann. The statistical analysis of the match was approximately 79% consistent with Madeleine's DNA profile, significant enough to be noteworthy, insufficient to meet the threshold for evidential certainty in criminal proceedings. The new drama, and the coverage around it, correctly states that there is no conclusive DNA evidence linking the McCanns to any crime. That is accurate. That is the legal position. That is what the forensic record formally concludes. But here is what the complete record also shows. Here is what the documentation that is sitting in the public domain also contains. The cadaver dogs did not only alert to the hire car. They alerted in multiple locations. They alerted in the apartment. They alerted to areas and objects associated with the McCann family across a number of different sites. The dogs, British police dogs, trained and certified, with established records of accuracy, gave positive responses in several locations that became part of the Portuguese investigation's case file. Those alerts are documented. The responses are on record. And the forensic analysis of the material found at those locations, material that was of human biological origin, is also part of the public record. Now, cadaver dog alerts are not evidence in a court of law. This is a critical distinction that matters enormously and that has been both exploited and ignored in coverage of this case. A dog alert is an investigative lead. It tells investigators where to look. It does not, by itself, prove anything. The courts in Portugal concluded that the forensic material gathered was insufficient to support a prosecution. That conclusion stands. The legal position is clear. But documentation requires us to say, the alerts occurred, the material was found, it was of human biological origin, and the forensic analysis was inconclusive rather than negative. To say simply that there is no evidence, when the more precise statement is that the evidence found was insufficient for prosecution, is not the same thing. And in a case this significant, that distinction matters. Now we come to revelation number 6. And this is where the case, in its current form, takes a turn that raises as many questions as it answers. Christian Bruckner is a German national. He is a convicted criminal with a history of drug offenses and sexual crimes committed in the Algarve region of Portugal, including an offense committed in Praia da Luz itself. He was living in the area at the time Madeleine McCann disappeared. German prosecutors, after an extensive investigation that lasted several years, named him as the prime suspect in her disappearance. They stated publicly in 2020 that they believed Madeleine was dead, and that Bruckner was responsible. That was the public declaration from the German authorities. Here is what happened next. German prosecutors brought Bruckner to trial. Not for anything connected to Madeleine McCann, the Evie.